Started out on a one-way train. Always knew where I was gonna go next. Didn't know until.
Welcome to the 10th episode of Pull and Perseverance. To my regular viewers, thank you for your unwavering support. And to the newcomers, welcome aboard. I'm so thrilled to have you here. It's hard to believe we've reached this milestone, but to mark the occasion, I have a very special guest joining me, Mrs. Tammy Gopal. Tammy Gopal is the newly appointed Chief Regulatory Officer at SAHPRA. She is more than just a transformative leader working to ensure the safety, efficacy, and quality of healthcare products for South Africans. She is a true embodiment of grace under pressure, resilience in the face of adversity, and unwavering determination to navigate challenges with grit and purpose. Her relentless pursuit of excellence consistently drives her to greater heights, all with the one goal in mind, ensuring the well-being of the patient. Tammy inspires me to reflect on the words of a motivational speaker, Ricky Rogers, who said, and I quote, "Strength doesn't come from what you can do. It comes from overcoming the things you once thought you couldn't," unquote. Her story is a shining example of this, and I can't wait to delve deeper into her remarkable journey. Let's get started. Hi, Tammy. Thank you for joining me on Pull and Perseverance. I'm so excited to have you here. And congratulations on your new role.
Thank you so much, Prof. Veni. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks. I know it's really hectic and starting a new role can't be easy.
Yeah.
So thanks for accommodating me. So, first question, how did you get here?
You mean the whole journey from
Yeah, because I think lots of people potentially aspire to this particular role, and it's because it's a chief regulatory officer is an amazing role, and congratulations again. So how did your career path take you to this particular position?
Okay, Veni. Yeah, it's a long answer. But I started off in hospital, basically, during internship, where we all start. And after a period of time, I realized this was not for me. And then I took some time off to raise my children and was thinking about what I wanted to do. And I was doing hospital retailing a little bit as well. And then I decided to get into regulatory or quality, and I was dicing between the two. And thankfully landed a great opportunity at Aspen, where I started off my regulatory career, coming in totally wet behind the ears with no experience. I was very fortunate to be given an opportunity. And I know that's one of the questions you're going to ask me is how did I get in? We'll wait for you to ask me that. And then from there, I moved on into other roles. So what I did is as soon as I felt like I reached a ceiling, I took the deep end and I went in for tougher and tougher roles that were far were out of my reach because I really wanted to stretch myself. And from there, I went into Allegan at the time. I took on a role as a deputy RP, did a little bit of Africa work. Then from there, the company had split into the two applicants, and Genup Healthcare needed a responsible pharmacist. So I could stay on at Allegan or move to the RP role. And as you would have it, I chose the RP role because I needed to set up the applicancy, the licensing. So I really pushed myself every time to take on tougher challenges. And from there, then I went into my last long stint, or close to 10 years, was at Adcock. And as you can imagine, dealing with a large local manufacturing company, being the RP for a company with that many products, etc. And then also reached a ceiling after about 10 years. And this opportunity came up. And then I thought, why not? And that's how I found myself here. But in between, Veni, I must say, it's a lot of affiliation with associations. And I think you probably asked me that question a bit later about youngsters and how they can get involved. I want to talk specifically on the role in associations and how that can help their careers. Remind me if I forget.
I will. No, definitely. Thank you. What an illustrious career. You make it sound easy, but I'm sure it was not.
It was
Yeah, so my
not.
next question would be, I think in my experience as an academic, a large component of young graduates want to get into the industry space and particularly into regulatory. So what advice would you give them to get it right?
Mm.
Because it's a tough space to get into.
Yes, absolutely. And I hear it all the time. And I've given a lot of youngsters the guidance and took on quite a few in my previous roles where I brought on graduate pharmacists or youngsters, even scientists, into the organization and they developed their career path. One or two have gone on to do so well to be deputy RPs and RPs in other companies and fulfilling roles in associations. So we've seen the success there. But what it really is, and I think the curriculum in academia has definitely evolved from what it was when I studied pharmacy.
Mm.
So there's definitely that as a plus. But I think it's the individual and their initiative. When you come into a regulatory role, the pressure is unbelievable. So, what companies are looking for is for an individual to hit the ground running. It's very hard to do, and it's quite an unfair request, right? Because we all need time to learn. Unfortunately, that's where the market actually sits with regulatory pharmacists. So, there's not enough time to train. So, to what extent does an individual go and learn?
Mm.
So, for example, the SAHPRA website, there's a wealth of information. You want to get into regulatory. How much do you know about the ins and outs of the regulator? How much do you know about the Medicine Act? How much do you know about certain regulations that govern a package insert, for example? Things like that that can show a prospective employer that you do have an interest, you can apply your mind, you are looking at what's happening in the global space. And I think that's what sets an individual apart. Think about it. Otherwise, you are coming from the same group of interns or graduates. You have to see how you can set yourself apart.
I agree with you.
Mm,
I think knowing where you want to go, but also preparing to get to that role and not
exactly.
necessarily having that hands-on experience, but having the knowledge to back the fact that you can actually fulfill that particular role.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's something that's been a common theme across most of my interviews, where a lot
Mm,
of the people that I've interviewed say that in order to be successful or be given an opportunity in a particular role, you have to do your
mm,
homework. You have to know
mm,
the organization and you have to do your homework. So, yeah, that's
absolutely.
great advice. Thank you. So, in terms
Mm.
of challenges that you faced so far when it comes to leading up to this particular role, do you think there was certain challenges that really shaped your career path in this direction?
I think it's really left up to an individual. I think all our personalities are different. So it depends. I've met a lot of people that are extremely happy not managing people and
Mm.
very happy to be behind a desk and with a dossier or a few dossiers and being just a regulatory pharmacist. I've seen that and perfectly fine because it takes all sorts of us for this industry, right?
Mm.
And then I've met others that are so ambitious and then, want to move on very quickly and learn and absorb. So I really think it's left to an individual. I think the challenge I had was probably being faced in certain situations where I hit my ceiling too quickly and I had to move and I had to move. So I had to keep growing. But on top of that, I must say, I do see individuals move very quickly, not building enough foundation. So you
Mm.
get into a company and you work for 8 months or a year and you think you have a foundation. That is not sufficient. Or you get attracted to a title, or obviously everybody wants more money. But
Salary,
if you don't do your building blocks correctly in your foundation on regulatory, remember it's regulatory science, right?
Mm.
I prefer saying it's regulatory science. If you don't build those blocks in your foundation, you're going to grow too fast and you're never going to be able to lead a team and give the
Mm.
technical know-how. So take some time in your founding years to build those blocks. I think those are some of the things I could mention
Mm.
to the youngsters.
Thank you. That's great advice. So what does a chief regulatory officer do at SAHPRA? I think, it sounds like a a difficult job, and I'm sure it is. But what do you do? What is your typical day like? What are your expectations in terms of your role?
Yeah. So the role is obviously overseeing the core business of SAHPRA, right? It's overseeing and looking after the functionings of SAHPRA. So it takes care of the inspectorate and the regulatory compliance department. It takes care of the medical devices and radiation control department, the clinical department, and then obviously your pharmaceutical evaluations department. That is really the core of pharmaceutical companies and dossiers and the products. So that's what it does. The role itself takes care of strategy and the operations. So I have to be able to switch between the two, which I quite enjoy. I can look at strategy and understand where we're going in 5 years. If you look at the SAHPRA's strategic plan, it's available, it's in the public domain. I identify with where the regulator is going in 5 years. And that's why I bought in to come and work with the regulator, because I believe in that vision of SAHPRA. So for me, it's looking at that vision. It's looking as where my role is as chief regulatory and what can I do in these four massive departments sitting under me, but at the same time understanding the operations. And the operations relate to the daily challenges on performance, output, efficiency. It could be daily challenges where we have complaints, whether from the public on a product or substandard medicines or a legal issue or something that happened globally, so those are the matters that I have to be able to switch between the two, but everything is related more to the regulatory impact of a product.
Absolutely. So you mentioned strategic and operational. So in
Mm.
terms of SAHPRA's strategic vision, where are they heading in the next future, and what I mean, in terms of your role, I'm sure it's going to
Mm.
be pivotal in making that happen.
Yeah.
And how do you think you're going to be able to fulfill that vision for them, to assist them in helping that vision?
So the mandate for SAHPRA is definitely, as we know, right? It's access, it's health, it's taking care of our citizens, our population as South Africa, and then it's also being a leading regulator on the African continent. So for me, where I actually fit in then is what can I do to achieve all of that? There's going to be a few hiccups, like what do we do in terms of digitization? How prepared are we for AI? It's incredibly topical. We're doing a few prototypes at the moment on artificial intelligence and where we're headed as a regulator with AI. How do we use the resources we currently have to deal with the performance and the output that we have to deliver? That's the balance, and that's a very fine balance. As you know, the historic backlog and currently the current backlog as well. So how do we use efficiency? How do we use reliance? How do we use our relationships with and MOUs with global organizations to again be innovative in our thinking in ensuring how we are approving medication and medicines and medical devices and IVDs for the South African public?
Do you think that as a regulator, there's enough being put into that space in order to ensure that product safety and quality is optimized?
Mm. I think as a regulator, we have started that journey. If you see that there was a post-marketing surveillance guideline that was published a few years back, and now it has been, if I can say, implemented, and applicants are being requested for some of the data related to the post-marketing surveillance that the regulator is carrying on. It does not take away from the role and the responsibility of applicants and what they do for post-marketing surveillance for their particular product. And I think that is a big area that we need to look at from both ends of the spectrum. Because at the end of the day, we're all protecting patients. We all want the right thing for a patient at the end of the day. And that's where post-marketing surveillance comes in.
Yeah. So from my knowledge, my limited knowledge in terms of post-marketing surveillance, a lot of responsibility lies on the applicant. So where
Mhm.
does SAHPRA come in when it comes to, because I don't think you have the capacity to be able to test every single batch that comes into the country.
Yeah.
So how do you just base it on trust based on the applicant? How does that work?
So, so firstly, for an applicant to release their product, it's post importation, right? That
Yeah.
is based on identification and assay, unless there's an exemption. That is what applicants do, and that is the responsibility of the applicant. Where post-marketing surveillance comes in, and SAHPRA has already done this with applicants, is, for example, go to the market and look at a batch of an ARV, approach the applicant and ask for the ARV release documentation, your release certification, your batch manufacturing records, certain aspects of your dossier. That
Mhm.
then gets reviewed by our regulatory compliance department, and any anomalies or discrepancies are then addressed with the applicant. So you're right. I mean, we do need a lot more to be done, but I think in terms of capacity, we're not there yet, but it has started.
That's great. Yeah,
Mm.
I'm glad to hear that. In terms of regulatory challenges, we're faced with so many. And as
Mm.
you've described already, you have such massive units that undertake such important aspects
Mm.
in terms of medicine registration. So, what are the main challenges you think South Africa is being faced from a medicine regulatory perspective at the moment?
I think so. There's two things, right? When we look at regulation, I think the one is what applicants are facing is a lot of global changes, a lot of regulations that are coming out. Um, there could be something related to the nitrosamines, as you know. Globally, it's far more advanced than what is happening in South Africa, and where we are looking at nitrosamines in products. You could have certain guidelines on leachables and extractables related to your biological medicine. ICH is releasing a new document related to that. Some authorities already have that in place. So there's quite a bit that is happening globally that we need to ensure that we are abreast as a country, as a regulator and applicant. The other thing is ATMPs, all your advanced therapies, tissue, cell, gene. If you look at SAHPRA's strategic plan, you will see in there we have a plan to look at building relationships with academia, looking at skills, looking at capacity, and building a framework over the next 5 years to look at all these new and emerging treatments and technologies. Then you get the other aspect where SAHPRA is moving from a digitization perspective. And how ready are applicants on digitization using our systems that we currently, I mean, you would know that we launched a portal, an engagement portal on the 1st of April. So it's all of that that applicants need to get used to working with the regulator.
So, what about challenges such as the problem that we're facing with codeine? That's such a, oh, it's yeah, close to my heart because I'm just seeing so much of abuse around codeine,
Yeah.
especially amongst children. So, how does SAPRA manage those kind of challenges?
Yeah, there's quite a bit being done on the Codeine Care forums. And last year, SAHPRA had a series of webinars educating pharmacists on the dispensing practices of your codeine. And we know that that is also a challenge. And where does Pharmacy Council and pharmacists come in? Where do manufacturers come in? Where do wholesalers come in? Where does customer verifications happen between wholesalers and applicants, and then your pharmacies? Where does dispensing practices take place and are accounted for? So I think as a regulator, all of these webinars have been done to educate either the public or the professions, the various professions. Look, and SAHPRA does act on any complaints from the public related to the misuse or abuse of codeine-containing products.
So it sounds
And
as if
sorry, and you know that there is the system that has been discussed. I haven't gotten up to date on the system in the last 2 months with the transition I made over to the regulators yet. Yeah, but there is the system on the tracking and the use.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but it sounds as if you're suggesting that it's a collective responsibility, which I agree with you, in terms of everybody needs to be aware of the usage. But from a regulator perspective, how do you prevent abuse of it from a sales perspective? Is there any control you have over that from wholesalers, manufacturers? Do
I
you
think
get involved with that component?
At this stage, Veni, now that I'm on the regulator side, I can't exactly comment as yet. I haven't gotten involved on those projects. I
Okay.
may be speaking out of turn because my knowledge is from the industry side.
Okay. All right.
So too
Fair enough.
fresh on that.
So I guess we're gonna have to meet again.
Yeah, for a codeine care specific
Yeah.
discussion if you want.
In relation to you mentioned the public awareness. Do you think SAHPRA is well known within the public domain from an education perspective? And if not, or if yes, what have you done, or how would you improve that?
Yeah. So SAHPRA is busy with quite a bit of awareness, depending on whatever type of topics. Look,
Mhm.
during COVID, I mean, let's be honest, SAHPRA was everywhere.
Yes.
If not the majority of our population, granted, but a fair amount should know who the
Mhm.
regulator or SAHPRA as an entity exists. You'll be surprised that there are patients that come directly to SAHPRA and complain or whatever the case is. So there is an awareness of who SAHPRA is. But granted, I think more could be done.
Hmm. And in terms of cannabis, there's been such discussion. I hope you can give me some feedback on cannabis. There's just been, a series of news snippets on what's happening in cannabis. So what is SAHPRA's stance on the current status of cannabis?
Yeah. And I think this is fresh out when the minister retracted the regulation. I think it was last week or the week before. So
Mhm.
I think that caused confusion in what should be regulated. Um, SAHPRA will regulate medicines. So and it is very clear in the schedules, the levels of your THC, etc. And that's where SAHPRA is standing, that if it is not a medicine, SAHPRA's mandate will not look at anything else other than a medicine. So that's where the retraction from the regulation came from. I think that caused confusion. I think on the cannabis, that's about as much as I can say for now.
Thank you. So in terms of complementary medicine, that's another animal on its own. Um, so where are we at with complementary medicine? Because I think there's been a lot of confusion in the industry in terms of, what is the right thing to do? Where do we stand in
Mm.
terms of that?
So on the complementary medicine, so where it is currently is the licensing that has taken place, and that with the 3D listing, as you are
Yes.
aware, and those licenses that if they approved, it's on the SAHPRA website. So the licensing is in progress. A system is being built for the dossier, if I can say, for complementary medicine. So until the unit is ready to share that with the industry on how applications should be submitted, the content of those applications, they will share it via the various working groups or industry engagements. Once that is ready and possibly piloted, comment is made, then only can the unit go into call-ups of your complementary medicine, obviously working from high risk down to a lower level of risk for the call-up of complementary medicine. That's where the unit is currently, but they are actively working on a system for a dossier, if I can say. It would, so the content of what defines the dossier for a complementary medicine is what's under discussion within the unit. So they are actively working on that. What's in a high risk dossier? What's in a low risk claim? What type of clinical information you need? And building that structure into an electronic system so applicants can then submit dossiers.
Okay. And medical devices, where are we at there?
So with medical devices, currently there is, as you know, the medical device licensing for entities have happened, distributors, importers, manufacturers, that's taken place. Currently, there's a feasibility exercise that the medical device unit has done, which means that to test all the guidelines and the process of registering a medical device, that we have everything in place. There was an interest from the industry that came through. I think it was about 18 medical devices, 18 or 19, I stand to be corrected, and that is currently in the process with medical devices. So once that is concluded, it means that they have piloted or tested their system, and then they would open up for a call up and publish fees, etc., for medical
Okay.
devices. Mhm.
So definitely developments in that space
Oh,
that,
yes. Yeah. The medical device and complementary units are definitely progressing towards a robust regulatory framework.
so in terms of SAHPRA, I mean, I always punt SAHPRA as being one of the best, I think, around the world, regulatory bodies. But within Africa, where are we at in terms of harmonization across the country? Because I think from the little knowledge that I have, I'm aware that a lot of African countries look to South Africa and
Mm,
SAHPRA specifically to be able to almost benchmark against.
mm,
So,
absolutely.
so where are we at in terms of harmonization across the continent?
Mm, there are definite harmonization initiatives happening. Quite a few memorandum of understandings have been done with other regulators. Egypt was one of them recently, and an expression of interest was done for applicants that would like to register a product in Egypt and in South Africa. There is harmonization initiatives, as you know, under the AMRH umbrella, Zazibona, etc. And that's the process that we are, SAHPRA is looking at. So there's quite a bit that is going on behind the scenes. And all that leads to how do we use the resources we have effectively to get product registered, approved, that is quality, safe, and efficacious for us, and where we can leverage off other uh, countries as well and their expertise. You would see that there was a publication last week, I think, on the success of some of the reliance or collaborative tools for the continental listing.
Mm.
You would have seen something like that published on the SAHPRA website.
So talking about harmonization across the continent, one
Mm-hmm.
of the biggest challenges I think we're facing now is substandard and falsified medicines coming into the country.
Mm-hmm.
So what is SAHPRA doing? What is the initiatives that they have in place in order to ensure that we are protected as a country?
Yeah. So, Veni, on that, we have a lead in our department that's extremely passionate about substandard and falsified, and she has engaged extensively with WHO, brings all the learnings back. We look at how reactive are we to go out into the market and investigate whether there are complaints of counterfeit, or, I mean, post-marketing surveillance is another issue where you can actually pick up if something on the market had found itself that was not released by the applicant, you know. So there's quite a bit with the WHO learnings and the webinars that has been done last year. Yeah, I think that's those initiatives are there. I think there's a huge responsibility, and this I'm talking without my SAHPRA hat. I'm talking as a pharmacist.
Mm.
Because for me, what drives me in my day, in everything I do, is I see a patient. Like all my decision making, I have never forgotten that in my entire career, that there's a patient at the end of everything I do. So I remember it, and it's a topic I'm quite passionate about. And I spoke on this topic in Brisbane at the International FIP conference about 2 years back on diethylene glycol. and what had happened to children. I mean, in this day and age, how do we sit back and watch these kind of things? And what
Mm,
do we then do as pharmacists in our role to be proactive, to identify those risks? I know in one of the companies that I worked with, you don't automatically assume that you're doing everything right. You have to have an inquiring mind. If you are in regulatory and quality, you have to have an inquiring mind to go and dig and look at how can you improve or mitigate if you have to.
mm,
And I had done a diethylene glycol assessment. So you basically look at the solvent, the propylene glycol as a
mm,
solvent, and you make sure what are those quantities of diethylene glycol. How are you testing every drum? WHO released a guideline. How do you, as a regulatory or a quality pharmacist, bring those guidelines, identify them, and bring them into your organization and say, let's do something. We can't wait for something to happen.
mm,
How do you secure your supply chain? How do you make sure that you're testing according to latest pharmacopoeial standards? And doing an assessment like that, it shows initiative from an individual, not only as a title as a regulatory or a quality individual, but as a pharmacist. Because at the end
mm.
of the day, we all have that role. And I think it's not just where the regulator comes in, where do pharmacists and applicants come in to try and make sure that we ring fence products and ensure the security of the supply to patients at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Mm,
I think, that goes back to the pharmacy oath.
exactly.
Um, we owe it to
Can't
our
forget that.
patients. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
No matter
Absolutely.
which space you're in. So I remember the diethylene glycol. I mean, that was recently with the Benylin, that was really
Mm,
scary across the
mm,
continent. So it really has far-reaching consequences. And
absolutely.
then speaking about that kind of substandard and falsified medicine, pharmacovigilance is now taken off, which I'm so
Mm,
excited about because I'm
mm,
passionate about it.
yeah.
And we're seeing more and more interest around pharmacovigilance. And SAHPRA has also taken uh, really positive steps in that direction in terms
Mm,
of having a separate audit. So, where do you see pharmacovigilance moving towards? And do
mm,
you think we're bringing enough, awareness around it, not just from a pharmacist perspective, but also from a patient perspective?
mm. Again, Devani, we can always do more.
Mm,
There, I don't believe patients really understand adverse events. I find myself still educating friends and families to
mm,
say, go and report your AE, and then explaining what this means in the bigger scope of our pharma world and how
mm,
this leads to signals, etc. Then explaining it and how your your complaint or listing your AE actually leads to eventually improving, updating package inserts. The public don't know that by and large, my personal experience. So I believe a lot can be done. Again, we're truly blessed here in SAHPRA. We have champions in these various areas that are extremely passionate.
mm,
Pharmacovigilance, again, led by a dynamic leader who is passionate to drive PV in the country and constantly looking at ways in which we improve and educate and bring about awareness in the provinces, or even consulting with academia and how do we collaborate and work together. So I think that's one of the big things I appreciate coming to SAHPRA is I've seen a lot of stakeholder relationships unfold in areas that I didn't even think that were possible or existed.
mm,
But there's so much being done and there's so much openness in how do we leverage off each other to actually do what's right for our country and
I
healthcare.
agree. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Mm,
And in terms of product quality, so that also
mm,
falls within the realm of pharmacovigilance. And I find personally, as pharmacists, we don't do enough in terms of product quality. And
mm,
again, I mean, anecdotal evidence, really nothing proven, but I
mm,
think we don't report. We just let it slide almost, where we
mm,
see a product changing color or disintegrating. So, I mean, What is SAHPRA's stance on that in terms of product quality?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's I mean, again, we have the public that can approach SAHPRA and lay a complaint. But I think for patients to understand, and even pharmacists to then ensure that they lodge those complaints with an applicant, so an applicant can do their investigations. And again, I'm speaking with my hat that I'm fresh out of in my roles in industry, in various positions that I had, and how critical it is, and how, as an applicant, you pick up a trend immediately when you have 2 or 3 patients complain about a color change, complain about whatever the case may be, a foreign object or whatever. I mean, I've been in companies where I've done quite a few recalls, but it comes back when a patient comes to you and say, this is what's happening, and you pick up a trend and you start acting with very robust processes in a quality department. So I think, again, we must never separate the role of the applicant putting product on the market, and obviously the regulator ensures that the way you're putting the product on the market meets the standards. But to ensure the life cycle of it, it's really applicants that take a huge responsibility as well.
yeah, and it goes back to education as well. I
Mm,
think, as you said, the curriculum has evolved, but we need to do more around pharmacovigilance and awareness around
mm,
product quality and industry regulatory as a whole within the pharmacy curriculum.
mm.
I just feel sometimes pharmacists, maybe because it's too much of work as well, because it's an administrative process,
Exactly.
which is a deterrent because your end goal is to get the patient out, of your
Mm,
pharmacy. So that's also a challenge.
yeah.
Um,
But what I've
so
seen is applicants have on their website such easy
yeah,
means of reporting. So it's not a
yeah.
phone call and put me through extension number 3. It's about getting onto the platform, and really, I mean, it doesn't take long. And applicants appreciate that type of feedback.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, the
It's
applicants I
just
worked for. Hmm.
um in terms of your advice to young people, as you said earlier,
Mm,
what would you, because as I said earlier, I think young pharmacists really want to get into the pharmaceutical industry space.
mm.
What advice would you give them? What would be your best piece of advice?
Get your hands dirty. So I would, as I said, in the workplace, take the difficult tasks, take the ones that are going to challenge you. Um, People that have worked with me know that I always drive critical thinking. It's something that's not, you cannot teach it easily. It really
Mm,
depends on how you develop those neural pathways in your own brain, right? Because that's what it is. It's about challenging yourself to take on the difficult tasks, to say, and I mean, every area we go to, we have the difficult tasks that nobody wants to do but needs to be tackled. So that would be the first, is get your hands dirty. The other one is raise your hands for the tough things. So joining associations, and I must say this really complemented me in my career path. Um, Being on associations, you don't get paid, right? Those are after
mm,
hours responsibilities. It's what's driving you. It's your passion, your ambition. It's about contributing to an industry that you love, to make sure that the industry you love grows and gets better. And I must have been really young in my 30s when I decided to join SAPI, for example. That was one of the first associations I joined. And then from there, I moved on, I think, to be one of the youngest presidents of SAPI, and then moved on with that exposure into FIP. Eventually grew into FIP, and sitting now as a treasurer and an exco member on the FIP industry sector. Again, putting my hand up and doing the difficult after hours work. sitting on the ITG and all the working groups that I belong to in the industry sector. Those working groups are tough because you've got to build solutions and answers, to come and present to the regulator and work with the regulator. So I would say that young pharmacists who want to get into regulatory, put your hands up. These associations are always looking for individuals to either co-opt. You could get co-opted because you have digital knowledge and some offering that you could bring to the team, and they would take you on because they're always looking for hands to assist and help. So I think that youngsters must not overlook the role of associations in your career. And the third piece of advice is find mentors. I was extremely blessed that I had women that really took an interest in me and believed in me, that really said, I believe if I put her in this position or put her in whatever position, she will rise up to the challenge. I had lots of mentors along the way, in the jobs that I worked, in the associations that I belonged to, throughout my career. And because of that, I felt I had that opportunity. But the reason is you've got to go and find that mentor. You've got to find and say, why am I going to stand out? I mean, a mentor is not going to figure who you are, right? You've got to make that bold step to go out and say, can you mentor me, or can you help me with this in this season to reach particular goals, etc. And I found mentors that gave me opportunities. And if it wasn't for this combination of everything I've said now, the critical thinking, doing the challenges, the association work, the mentors, I don't think I would have been where I am right now. It's a culmination of a whole lot that has contributed to my growth.
That's beautiful, Tammy. Thank you. So in terms of education, so do you think having or going for a master's degree or doing those short courses, I know you're going to say yes, but in terms of shaping your career path or anybody's career path within this space, do you think it's a necessary requirement?
For sure, Vinny. It's like I always tell young people, or even those a few years younger than me, do not think that with just your degree that's going to be enough. You've got to stay relevant. How will you be marketable? What would happen in 10 years? Just reflect what happened with us in regulatory in the last 5 years. Reflect what happened with SAHPRA and EMA. Reflect how SAHPRA has gone into ECTD. Reflect on every other guideline. I mean, SAHPRA has published quite a bit of guidelines in the last few years, right? What happened in regulatory in the last 5 years was not what was how regulatory was 10 years ago. So if an individual thinks that they can stay relevant doing, not advancing their knowledge, there's no way you're going to be marketable in 5 years' time. So I would say, like, I get a lot of information on LinkedIn, post occasionally if something is interesting, So how are you doing that type of education? And then formal, definitely short courses. CPDs, we have to. As pharmacists, we have to. And even if you are working, it's part of training. You have to do your technical advancement. Definitely, I mean, I went on to do a business qualification, the PDBA at Gibbs. Didn't really want to do my MBA because I felt I wasn't cut out for that, and rightfully so, chose the master's in regulatory science because that's what I realized my strength was, and glad that I did do that. So I think individuals must understand what their strength is and where they're headed and map it out in that way. But definitely you cannot for a second think that what you have is enough. You've got to have this mindset to learn and grow.
Thank you. And it sounds as if you keep saying that you have to know who you are, know what your goals are, what your vision is, and where you see yourself in, 5, 10 years' time. to have a plan mapped out in order to progress your career.
Yes.
So that's core to success. It sounds like.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, and some things can be daunting for an individual. Like, that's why I say you get all types. You get an individual that's very happy doing certain types of products in a regulatory space who admit that I don't want to manage people.
Mm,
And that's great and that's fine, but you recognize who you are and you get
mm,
some that have the skill to network, to lobby, to lead people, to inspire, motivate, lead. Then you must recognize that so you can start building the path. So, apart from critical thinking that everybody that's worked with me knows that I sing that song, the other one is talents. I believe that we all are given our set of talents. And unless you're stretched, you will not understand your potential. Unless you are stretched, you're never going to know what you can unlock. And I think for me, that drives me every time is I just want to see what's new, what's next, what else can I unlock? What is latent in me as an individual that I haven't unlocked for the benefit of myself and the team and patients? Or, what do I, as a manager or a leader, unlock in the people beneath me, or working with me? Because you have that responsibility. Once you become a manager, it's not only about you. Once you
mm,
become a leader, it's not only about you. You have to have the ability to unlock the potential in people around you and start stretching them. And again, it goes back to the people that mentored me, that stretched me and taught me this. And
mm.
in the same way, that's my thing that I want to give back so I can stretch others around me if they want to be stretched.
So where to next, Tammy? I mean, you've reached, I would think, the pinnacle of one's career. Where do you see it? I know you just started, and you have a 5-year term, but I mean,
Mm.
what would be your natural progression in terms of your next role, and where do you see yourself?
Mm. To be honest, Vinny, I haven't even thought that far. If you asked me this question last year, I would have said to you, I hit a ceiling and I need to move, right? But being fresh here, like literally a
Mm,
month in this role, I'm learning so much about SAHPRA. It's new relationship. It's
mm,
completely different mindset working with the regulator. It's understanding your mandate nationally. It's a lot that I have to change in my thinking. It's working with a whole lot of departments, different sets of skills,
mm,
across the board from radiation control and medical physicists to pharmacists and scientists and vets, etc. It's like dealing with a whole lot of skill. So I
mm,
think, and understanding the vision, where SAHPRA headed, and my role to make sure
mm.
that I achieve those objectives in my role and for SAHPRA. So I think, yeah, ask me in 2 years. Yeah,
We
for
haven't
now.
even touched on veterinary medicine and compounding as well, because
Mm,
there's so much happening in the compounding space on a small scale, extemporaneous
mm,
compounding, not just in vet spaces, but
mm.
I'm sure you're very familiar with the Ozempics and the compounding that's
Yes.
happening there. So before we conclude, I forgot to ask you this. So what
Mm.
is the current status in terms of those areas with compounding?
Yeah. So SAHPRA put out a communication on the compounding for GLP and
Mm,
asked for comment. So
mm,
right now, I think as much as I can say is as much as is in the communication that SAHPRA sent out, and that's the SAHPRA position. We are getting comment from the industry on that particular communication, and we will consult internally and issue out communication if we have to.
okay, thank you.
Mm,
So
mm.
my last question, hopefully my last question. If you had to recommend a book that has changed or shaped the way you thought, and what would it be?
Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning.
Uh,
Do you know it?
Viktor Frankl never. I haven't read that one, but he never
Man's
fails.
Search. It's
Yeah,
Man's Search for Meaning.
meaning.
It's a tough book to read. You've got to absorb page by page. It's really deep. It's quite a bit of introspection in, I recommend it to a lot of people, and it was actually someone else that recommended it to us when he came and gave a talk to the regulatory department. He was a professor, and that's when I thought, let me pick this book up, and I keep it at my bedside, highlighted a few things, and it really talks about your purpose, your role in society. And for me, Viktor Frankl, in there, he says it's your life's purpose is about that responsibility to bring solutions and answers. So I always reflect and I think, what are you bringing to the table? What is the meaning of your life? So it's quite and it's written, obviously you'll see, during the Nazi time, etc. So it's quite a difficult read, but a lot of introspection. It's yeah, a great book.
Now that you're mentioning it, I started reading it. I couldn't because it was so intense.
Yes,
It was, yeah, because that's his journey at the concentration camp, am I right?
yes,
And how he
that's
talks about
right.
leaving his wife behind, not knowing where she is,
Yes,
etc. Yeah, that was,
exactly.
I couldn't fulfill it because it was so hard.
It's a very tough read, but
Yeah.
if you push through, you find how he found his purpose in there and how he felt that he had a role to provide dignity to others and listen to them in this concentration camp. And it
Mm,
just makes you think on what is your meaning of your existence? What is your
mm,
purpose? And for me, that is something I always ask myself. The other
mm.
pharmaceutical read, if I can say, is Empire of Pain, and the whole OxyContin issue. That's
Yes.
also with the Purdue family, also a good read. It's shocking how things can go wrong and how we have different perceptions of ethics. We
Mm,
all say we're trusted, ethical,
mm,
integrity, but it's very hard to quantify that, and to say, I'm ethical, you're not, or you are, or you're more ethical than me. When
mm.
you read that book, there's quite a fine line. It's very interesting, and if you look at how they did their marketing, etc. So again, for those pharmacists who don't want to read Viktor Frankl's, you've got Empire of Pain to read.
Yeah, that was a powerful, I think it was a Netflix series, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
very
that's true.
powerful. And you're right, the ethics were so
Mm,
blurred there.
mm,
Interesting. But thank
mm.
you. Any closing comments, anything you'd like
Yeah.
to leave us with?
I always get asked about family and balancing family. And I would like to say something about that because
Please. Yeah.
because I think as women, we must never forget the role that we play as mothers and wives. And because that is a society in itself, right? When you're
Mhm.
going home, building your family is your society that you're building. And balancing that as women in the careers we have is critical. The one thing I always say is when I go home, you forget everything. You're a mother and a wife,
Mm,
Um, and for me, how I balance that and try and be, and it's hard, you don't get it right every day, but try and be fully present at home when you're a mother and wife. But then
mm,
when you get to the office, is to be fully present in that role. Still, obviously, you're getting your messages from your kids or your husband, or whatever the case is.
mm,
But I think we must never lose sight that you cannot, how you balance is an art, and how you forgive yourself if you don't get that right in a day. Because overall, in the 3 months, you could be doing a great job, but in a day, you may not get it right. And that's okay. I was very fortunate that I landed quite a few half-day jobs, like 6-hour jobs. So I was very fortunate, and a lot of people can't believe how I had done that. But again, it's mentors that and line managers that saw that I could actually work in the reduced hours because I really wanted the best of both worlds. Um, and then try to be present with my children in the afternoon. So definitely, Veni, I took 3 years off to focus on my family. So I think women must not think that there is a rule book of how you do it. It just works for your family and for you at the end of the day. So my journey ended up such that I could spend time with my children. And then obviously now, I guess it's payback time for working half day, right? I've got to work 3 times longer now.
Ada. That
But
is powerful advice. Wow,
yeah.
thank you. I so appreciate that, especially because we have such a large percentage of women in pharmacy. And I
Yes.
think that's what we're all looking for. We all strive for to be able to strike that balance between work and family. And as you
Mm.
said, I mean, family is a society on its own. If we don't get that right, the rest of the world suffers.
Yes,
So
absolutely. So I read quite a
that's
bit of biographies. So the other one is Indra Nooy's biography, ex-Pepsi CEO.
yes,
I think
yes.
for women to also understand how did she do it with her family and her position. It can be done. We just have different ways in how we navigate or different support systems. The other
Yeah.
interesting book, obviously, was May Musk. I was very curious with Elon
Elon's
Musk's
mom. Yeah.
upbringing. So, reading May Musk's biography as well, just learning from these women and seeing what could work for me. What can I learn from this individual? But not even so far-fetched, Benny. It's learning from the people around me.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
learning from a team member. How do
Mm.
they do certain things in their lives, or what do they learn? There's people around that are doing it, so it's possible.
Yeah, it's the unsung heroes, eh, that we need to
Absolutely.
acknowledge. Yeah.
Yeah,
The other one that was
absolutely.
really good, I thought, was Barack Obama's, Michelle Obama's book.
Yes, I read that
That
as
was
well.
good. Yeah, she was
Yeah,
also very insightful on how she balanced everything. But that's
absolutely.
fantastic advice. Thank you. I so
Mm,
appreciate that. And I
mm.
really, really do appreciate the time you've taken out of your busy schedule to spend an hour with me. I would love to have a chat with you again because I think we haven't delved into so many issues. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna hopefully get you in the future again.
absolutely. We can
Um,
look at a one or two topics, technical
yes,
topics, if you
exactly.
wish.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and maybe we could have a panel discussion and take it from
Yeah,
there.
no, absolutely. And thanks, Veni, for what you're doing for your podcast. And I quite enjoyed the few that I've watched.
Thank you.
Yeah, and for what you're doing there at the university and your contribution to our young and upcoming pharmacists, yeah, no, appreciate all of us that's actually contributing to our younger generation. I think we all have a
Absolutely.
role to play. And thank you for offering and wanting to have me on your podcast. I'm truly honored.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Gopal is an inspirational leader with a clear purpose of helping patients access optimal quality medicines. She shed light on the dynamic and multifaceted role of SAHPRA and gave us insight into some of the challenges she faces. However, it is clear that these challenges will be met with steadfast passion, illuminating her commitment to the profession. Her dedication and commitment to quality medicines assures us that the future of medicine regulation in South Africa remains secure and progressive. Thank you all so much for being part of this journey. Stay motivated, embrace challenges, and continue striving for excellence in all you do. Thank you.